Mike.
You ready to go? All right. Okay, with the chime of the bell, we'll call our meeting to order at 7 o'clock here today, and we will begin by having an invocation by Mindy Wright and a pledge by Mike Snelson.
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity that we have to be here tonight and to be gathered as citizens of Springville City. We are grateful for the opportunity that we have to serve and to do and make good decisions for our city. And we pray that Thy Spirit will be with us, that we'll be able to have the inspiration and the guidance that we need to make good choices that will be best for our citizens. We ask for all of these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please rise and join me in repeating the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a side note, if you want something fun, Google where the Pledge of Allegiance came from. I did that the other day. I'm not sure anybody knows. Just do it. I won't go through the rhetoric of it, but it's quite an interesting story. So anyway. Okay, well, we'd like to welcome those who are here. A lot of the yellow shirts, we recognize you, and we'll recognize you here in just a minute, but we appreciate the opportunity to be able to have the citizens here. If there's anybody here that is from schools or scouts or anything like that, you're welcome to come up and sit on the stand with us. We have candy. Usually. Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks. So anyway, feel free to come up here. We'd love to have you come up here. So, okay, Mike reminds me that I need approval for the meeting's agenda. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting's agenda as written.
I will second that.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed. I would like to take a minute, and Stacy, are you here? There you are. We would just like to recognize you and everybody with your group and the Art City Days committee and everything that went on with Art City Days. We were just, I heard so many comments from so many citizens how much they appreciated everything. They said that there was even a great spirit there with the people. So it was, I think it turned out really, really, really well. So we're very grateful for all that you did. They go hyperdrive. Mm-hmm. And, you know, by Saturday night, they are pretty rummy. And but we're just so grateful for all that they do. It's just super. So thank you very, very much. Yeah. I could ask what your favorite thing was, and I would have a hard time picking because there's just so many diverse things. But if you haven't gone to the jigsaw puzzle contest, what was the time, Stacy? Do you know?
It was 1 hour and 27 minutes.
Okay, the jigsaw puzzle contest is everybody gets a 1,000-piece puzzle, and they have to put it together, and there's a team of 3 or 4 people. And it takes me probably close to 6 months. And they're doing it in like an hour and whatever, so it's just pretty incredible. So anyway, thank you so very much, Stacy. Okay, we have Lance, if you take a minute here with CERT.
Mayor and Council, it's my pleasure to present some recognition tonight. Frequently I stand here and, well, about twice a year and recognize the CERT graduates, and they're an awesome group. Here we're to recognize a different group, people that completed their CERT training and they wanted something more, and so they went and got some, became members of the CERT rehab team. So let me explain briefly what that is. So when the fire department is called to a significant incident, a first alarm is one contingent of vehicles and firefighters, but if they get there and they decide that it's going to take more than the resources that are on scene, then they strike a second alarm. So you've heard of 1-alarm fire, 2-alarm fire. So anytime they strike a second alarm, they know there's going to be multiple operational periods. So a team of firefighters will go in, and then they're going to come out. Well, another team comes in, and then that first team will go back in again if the incident lasts long enough. So during that time when they're out of the fire, or whatever emergency it is, then they need to make sure that they are rehabbed or ready to go back into the operation. And so part of that is their vitals are taken by the ambulance crew, but then our CERT rehab team is there to provide them with hydration and calories they need in order to continue to go back into the operation. So our CERT rehab team, they get called out at a moment's notice, and we're refining that to make it so it's an automated response through our new Phoenix G2 automated system. When our first rehab team was certified probably about two years ago, and just by coincidence there was a series of like 2 or 3 fires right in a row. But most recently, you may have heard of the trench collapse in Mapleton, where the construction was working in a 9-foot deep trench, and it collapsed on him. They were covered by 6 feet of soil. Well, our rehab team was called out to that incident, and they provided resources in order to assist in that rescue. So they do a vital function, and we really appreciate them taking the extra training, but also being ready at a moment's notice to go to these events. So we're here to recognize people who have been recertified, and then people who are here for their initial certification. So first we'll have the recertified people come up. Dale Harrison. Kent Gibson. Emma Thompson. Steve Witz. Jim Mullender. Mike Sawyer. Stephen Boyd. Julian Boyd. Donna Ferguson. Denise Thompson. Okay, and then our new certifications are Caitlin Ballou. Colin Ballou. Marcy Siegmiller.
Oh, was that Dan?
Kelly Jensen.
Didn't they call him?
Marcy Peck. Dmitry Okremenko. His brother Nicholas Okremento. And Ann Rebo. Okay. And we should recognize Joanna Larson. She's the one that started this and is here and continues to support it and keeps it running. So we want to thank all of our volunteers for all of the great work you do in our community, and our first responders absolutely appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody take one step that way.
There you go.
Karen's on our team.
Oh, you can get down there. You don't have a yellow
Put
shirt.
Put your shirt on
Yeah.
and go get in
Yeah,
there.
go down.
Just hold it up. I'll come. Double up.
Oh, wow. One, two, three. Got it.
thank you for your service. We are so grateful. Joanna, thank you so much for all that you do. It's a great service to our community. Okay, Josh, we have a recognition for Ann Anderson, so we'll turn the time over to you.
Continuing our run of recognition, we'd like to recognize Ann Anderson for her service on the Planning Commission. Ann was one of the inaugural members of the Community Board and was soon thereafter tapped to fill a vacancy on the Planning Commission and has served for the last 4 years. And we greatly appreciate her service. She's been around for some pretty substantial projects, as we've worked on the Lakeside Landing project and tried to got final site plan approval for the Allens block for the previous incarnation of the project at that site. And we really appreciate Ann's level-headedness and ability to ask insightful questions. And it was very nice to have her on the community board for a couple months, and I'm sure she didn't realize that when she volunteered for the community board that she would soon be roped into the Planning Commission. But we appreciate her service and have this plaque for her as we have for our other Planning Commission members. So Ann, would you please come up?
Would you like to say a few words, Ann?
I'd just like to say, Mayor Packard, thanks for the opportunity to serve. It's been a pleasure to be on the commission and just hear about what's going on in Springville. And we live in a wonderful community, and I think it's volunteers that make it that way, and we see that with the precision with Art City Days that just went on. But thank you very much, and also for your services as volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I add that I
Yeah.
enjoyed serving with Ann, and I found her input to be very insightful.
We sat next to each other and had a lot of fun.
We did.
You know, I didn't know Ann very well, and her past occupation was, there's a good reason, because my kids never ended up in her office, which was a good thing. But I got a chance to get to know her very quickly, and she's a pretty fast read. And she has such a high degree of integrity, and she has a great interest, and she has common sense. And it's something that was very much appreciated, not only on the community board for the short time, but on the Planning Commission where you served. And you were just a steady hand, and we appreciate that. We need that in the community. So thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
You betcha. All right. Very good. If you have comments or would like to make some comments in front of the City Council, you're welcome to fill out a sheet in the back and get that to Kim. And you're welcome to do that, anybody who's in the public. So, okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the City Council? Kim, anybody? Okay. Very good. We'll move to the consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. I need a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I'll motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Okay, we're going to go through a series of things in relationship to property taxes and budget. And we have a new state law in relationship to property taxes. And so I need to, as the chief budget officer? No, yeah, technically as mayor, at least under this jurisdiction of form of mayorship. So let me read this. Property tax increase statement. State law requires the city to make the following statement regarding property taxes. In Utah, a city's property tax rate does not automatically increase with inflation. When costs rise, maintaining current service levels sometimes require a deliberate adjustment to the tax rate. Springville City is currently considering levying a property tax rate that exceeds the certified tax rate for the upcoming fiscal year, which begins July 1, 2026. If approved, the proposed increase would generate approximately $97,000 in additional ad valorem property tax revenue, representing an approximate 3% increase in the city's property tax revenue. The purpose of this proposed increase is to help offset inflation-related cost increase in city operations that rely on property tax funding. If Springville City proceeds with this proposed tax rate increase, the city will provide formal notice and conduct a public hearing as required by state law, at which members of the public will have the opportunity to comment. Notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open and Public Meeting Act and include a separate agenda item for this required statement. Okay. Okay. Bruce, are you going to do the presentation of property tax?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Related to the statement that you just provided, there's another requirement that the city produce a property tax impact schedule. There are copies of that schedule here on the front desk if there's anyone here in the audience that would like a copy of those. This was actually presented back at the time of the adoption of the tentative budget. It's been altered just slightly to reflect the actual certified tax rates and associated revenues as they came from the state. One thing that's tricky with this new law is that the time frames are very compressed. So we're required to adopt this impact schedule when we adopt the tentative budget, but the county assessor hasn't finished its assessment work, nor has the state calculated the certified tax rates when we make that initial adoption. We received the certified rate and the certified revenue Thursday afternoon, and so we've just modified these to reflect those actual numbers. The proposed new revenue of $97,000 remains unchanged. The actual property tax revenue as calculated by the state changes the denominator of the calculation just slightly. So rather than the approximate 3% that you read about in your statement, Mayor, the actual number is 2.92%. And the estimated annual increase to a residence in Springville, and at the same time I'll mention that the county released the median and mean home values for residences in Springville, and the median home value in Springville is $475,600. So applying that tax rate increase to a residence of that value would generate or would result in a $5.49 increase from the state calculated certified tax rate. And that's an annual number, so that the city's portion of the property tax that a resident would pay would increase $5.49. That's largely due to the fact that in the state of Utah, residences receive a 45% discount from their assessed value, which is what brings that, or that discount is considered in this calculation. For businesses, however, there is no exemption. That exemption is called a residential exemption. And so a business would be would be taxed on its full assessed value or taxable value. So if you had a business that was valued at the same amount, that would result in a $9.99 increase for the year. In terms of where those dollars go, it's the intent of this property tax increase would be to offset inflation, which is basically throughout the general fund. Different departments within the general fund are affected differently because the way we budget, different proportions of property tax go to different departments depending on whether they produce revenue separate from property tax. So, for example, the Recreation Department, which includes the Clyde Recreation Center, collects fees, and so a good portion of the revenue that supports their operation is collected through fees for service that attendees at the CRC pay, which means then that the amount of property tax that subsidizes recreation is less. Police, on the other hand, which generates very little in the way of fees, is supported almost entirely with property tax. Therefore, the proportional distribution of the property tax increase is a little bit different department by department. I've consolidated those divisions within to departments: public safety, public works, community development, parks and rec, and leisure services along with general government. You can see on this slide the numbers in the proposed budget, and then what those budget numbers would be if the tax increase was not to go into place. You can see of the 97,000, just about half of it is going to public safety, police, fire, and dispatch. Most of the rest of that is going to parks, recreation, cultural services. That would be the library, the parks department, the recreation department, etc. We are required under the law for the council to adopt this impact schedule by resolution. So I think you've got a resolution in front of you. This does not require a public hearing. This is just, again, a statement of intent. It's not a final adoption of the tax increase. There's a whole additional process that we'll talk about as the night progresses. So if you've got any questions on the schedule, I'm happy to address those. Otherwise, we'd look for a motion on the resolution that's before you.
I have just one quick question, and how you, the proportion-wise, how you put those into each of those different departments. Is that mandated by the state, or is that something that the city has always done year after year, or is this a new? I guess, how do you proportion it?
It's not mandated by the state.
Okay.
We have done a version of this, as long as I've been here, a much more granular version of it for the last 4 budget cycles as we change the budgeting process that we've talked to you about over the last couple of years, where each department is much more closely tied to the revenues that it generates. In large measure, it's formulaic. So we look at funding for service levels, the revenue that they generate, and then property tax, and I shouldn't say just property tax, but other tax revenues. That would include things like sales tax that are also supplementing those departments.
Great, thank
But
you.
it's formulaic.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm open for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution, resolution number 2026-19, adopting a property tax impact schedule referenced in the property tax increase statement as a separate document from all other budget documents.
Okay, I have a motion.
I will second.
Gets a roll call vote. Karen?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And I just want to make a comment, and this is because we have people that are online. So I looked at the Utah Taxpayer Association, and this information really was for 2025, not 2026, because it's still in process. And there were, I don't remember, something like 66 who filed for property tax increases, 66 entities in the state of Utah. Of that, we of course were one of them, because last year we did have a property tax increase. There were 3 that were smaller tax increases than us, and there were 64 that were higher than us. There are some entities in the state of Utah that are doing property tax increases of, the highest was 223% or something. I just think that shows mismanagement, and I don't want to, because they may have a certain situation that's come up, but in prudent management, you just gradually go up and not have these 40%, 50% increases. I just think that not only is shocking to the public, but I think if you don't plan and budget properly, that you get those. And I think that we're a little bit more fiscally sound to do that. So every year I've proposed having a property tax increase. It's not very much, but it's inflation, 3 to 5%. And over time, that keeps us in line. It allows us to have cost of living increases for our people and whatnot. So I'd never want to plan on, never want to even think about having a 20 or 30 or 40%. And sometimes that's as a result that some councils or commissions are just not willing to do any property tax increases at all. And so it all of a sudden falls on the people that get elected to have to correct the ship. And so I really compliment Bruce and Troy and the council for supporting that overall philosophy. So anyway, I just wanted to explain that so that people know why we do this every year, and it's a whole lot easier to explain $5 or $9 annually to somebody than it is to explain $100 or $300 to somebody. So anyway, okay, enough said. Okay, Bruce, you're up again for a enterprise funds transfer.
This next piece is there's a state law that requires disclosure of any transfers that come from enterprise funds. And for us, enterprise funds generally refer to the utility account, the water, sewer, stormwater, power, transfers that are made to the general fund. We're required to disclose what those transfers are in the budget. We need to send a separate notice in the utility bills, and that's gone out. We've advertised it on social media and put the information also on the city's website. You're also required under state law to hold a separate public hearing to accept comment from any residents that would be here to speak to this issue. So I'll just quickly run through kind of how these transfers work. No actions required by the council as it relates to this. I mean, these transfers are included in the budget that you'll consider here in just a few minutes, but this is the public's opportunity to comment to the transfers from the enterprise funds specifically. In our city, there's really three types of transfers that are occurring. One is an administrative fee, and this one really has a basis or root in services received and compensation provided by the enterprise funds for services received from the general fund. And what I mean by that is we centralize things like the administrative functions of the city. So legal services, financial services, the treasury, utility billing, HR, payroll, all of those types of things are handled centrally and are housed and budgeted within the general fund. But much of the work that they do is in support of the enterprise funds that are run as if they were separate entities from a financial perspective outside of the general fund. So the water department does not have an HR department. They use the city's HR department. So that first column there of administrative fees is a calculated number based on cost allocations that's directly tied to the impact that those various departments place on the departments that are in the general fund providing the service. You can see the amounts there in the column, and that for all of the enterprise funds represents $4.3 million. The next column is what we call an operating transfer. The operating transfer is different from the administrative fee from the standpoint that there's no direct relationship between the transfer and any services received. In fact, there is no service received. It is simply a transfer of dollars from the enterprise funds to the general fund with no expectation of repayment. And the general fund can use those operating transfers however they want once the dollars are transferred. The philosophy behind these is really when you compare, for example, we'll use an example of an electric utility. In Springville City is the power company. If you go next door to Mapleton, the power company is Rocky Mountain Power. In Mapleton, Rocky Mountain Power, which is a private entity, utilizes the city's right-of-way to put poles and wires, and then the city, in exchange for use of that public right-of-way, typically pays a franchise fee, which is often around 6% that they pay to the city. They also pay property tax on facilities that they may have that are housed within the jurisdiction of the city. Because we operate all of those things internally, we don't receive property tax or a franchise fee from any of the utilities that are operating here, and yet they're using the public right-of-way. You could, at your option, choose to not levy that fee. This is effectively a fee in lieu of a franchise fee. But it also performs a separate function, which is to say an additional revenue source to the general fund, and it's one that is broader in scope than, for example, a property tax. So not-for-profit entities, school districts don't pay property tax, but they do pay utility fees. So this is a way for those entities that don't otherwise contribute funds to general fund impacts to make a contribution to the general fund. That's a philosophy that the City Council has adopted since before I was here. We've had an operating transfer every year for the 16 years that I've been here. And it really does help offset costs in the general fund and helps keep property taxes lower than they would otherwise be. That total amount of transfer is $3.7 million. Related to that is the provision of utility services to the enterprise or to the general fund from each of the departments that provide those services: water, sewer, electric, stormwater. So there's not a charge that comes from the utilities to the general fund that they pay. In your budget, you'll see there is actually a dollar amount ascribed to that service so that we've got an accounting of what the value of those are, but the payment for it is really in the form of a transfer from those enterprise funds to pay that bill. That total amount is $926,000. So the total enterprise fund transfers coming from the various enterprise funds to the general fund is $8.9 million. And that's in line with prior years. The rate at which we transfer, which is 6.5%, hasn't changed for the last couple of years, and we're not proposing to change that transfer rate in the current budget. If you've got any questions on that, I'm happy to address it. Otherwise, you just need to open a public hearing and allow the residents a chance to comment if they'd like.
Bruce, on these operational transfers, would they be likened to simply put, I guess, a dividend to the residents?
You could certainly look at it that way. You could look at it as a fee in lieu of property tax or franchise fees. It could equally be viewed as a dividend to the community from the standpoint that Rocky Mountain Power operates at a profit. That profit is actually set by the Public Service Commission at the state level. It's usually in the ballpark of 10 to 11%, and that 10 to 11% almost guaranteed rate of return to the utility goes to shareholders. And we're basically saying we're returning that money to the citizen shareholders of the utility here in Springville, another benefit of locally owned and controlled utilities.
Bruce, do you want to answer, kind of explain the $374,000 on the streets, the administrative fee?
Yes, that's a good, thanks for pointing that out, Mayor. In the current year budget for the first year, we created a separate fund for the streets department. Previous to this year, the streets department was housed within the general fund. Because they were housed within the general fund, they were effectively paying their share of administrative costs. You just couldn't see it on an accounting spreadsheet because it's all lumped into the general fund. For a number of reasons, transparency, better accounting, we decided to shift the streets fund to its own fund. And we've got a little bit of work to do here. I'll just mention, because the state law keeps changing. We're contemplating, as we just discussed in a study session, the implementation of a transportation utility fee, a TUF. And there may be some new accounting procedures that we're required to do under that law. We're researching how necessary that is. But regardless of that, we've now got a streets department that is standing alone, separate from the general fund. And we've now simply affixed those dollars that, again, they were paying previously under the general fund. You just couldn't see it because it was part of the general fund.
This is not new money or
Not new money. And there are actually still general fund dollars being transferred to the streets fund to subsidize the streets fund. This is simply transparency and cost accounting to represent the actual cost to run a streets department. Probably the biggest numbers in the streets department's allocation would be engineering and public works administration. So the city's engineering division, along with the public works administration division, are housed within the general fund, and a portion of their costs are allocated to the streets department, engineering being probably the biggest of those.
And none of the tough money is going into this.
The TUF money's not going into this under our budget, although under the TUF legislation, it is permissible to pay for administrative costs. So even if it was going to this, it would be permissible under the law.
But it's not.
But it's not.
Thank you. Okay, this is open for the public to make any questions in relationship to this to Bruce or to the council. I open this up for public comment.
Seeing as there's no public comment, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Okay, Patrick's not here, so who's taking this? Bruce, are you taking this in relationship to setting compensation for executive municipal officers according to the law? The disclosure is according to state law, correct?
Yes. Patrick conveniently went out of town to visit his newly born grandchild, of which I am still grandchildless. As a result of that, I drew this short straw to make this presentation. The truth is, Troy and I had an arm wrestling match, and I lost, and so I'm presenting that.
No, we said we weren't doing an arm wrestling match, and you volunteered.
I was trying to be magnanimous there. There's one section of state code that was added to in this last, I think it's been 2 legislative sessions ago. We've always had a law, well, I shouldn't say always, but for quite some time we've had a law that requires a separate public hearing for discussion of elected officials and statutory employees' compensation. That'll be the next public hearing. This one is a relatively new law. I think this will be the 3rd year where we are required under state law to have a separate public hearing on executive municipal officer compensation. Executive municipal officers is a defined term under the state law. Generally speaking, it's your city administrator, assistant city administrator, all the department heads, all the assistant department heads. For us in the budget, that's about 22 people. There's a couple more in there that I'm probably not remembering off the top of my head, but it's somewhere around 22 employees. Within the budget, there is currently, and I'll try to explain this as best I can, in terms of wage increases at the city, we typically divide that into 2 components, a cost of living adjustment and a merit increase. The cost of living adjustment is intended to recognize the fact that we're in an inflationary economy and the cost of living goes up. Similar adjustments are made in other federal and state business or state entities, agencies. Social Security goes through cost of living, military services go through cost of living. Many businesses recognize a cost of living adjustment. Typically, we adjust the wage table, the pay table, to recognize that cost of living. And in the current budget, that number is 3% and would be effective July 1st under the adopted budget. The other component of wage increases is a merit increase. And the way that policy is written, an employee is eligible from 0 to 6% wage increase based on merit. The catch to that is it still has to be awarded within the existing budget. So we budget sort of on an average basis, and then directors are allowed to apportion that merit increase based on the actual distribution of performance within their department. So if they want to recognize an exemplary employee, they can provide a higher than average increase, but they need to do that at the expense of lower performing employees. But there is that mechanism there, and we've tried to build that in intentionally to incentivize high performing employees and also send a signal to those that may perform less than average. For that reason, we've represented those cost changes between a range of 0 and 7.5% under that budgeted amount. And again, for the statutory employees, all of that compensation is based on the compensation schedules that are adopted as part of the budget. I think the key part for the public hearing here is calculating the maximum available under the budgeted amounts, that those total increases for any executive municipal officers would not exceed $236,560 citywide.
So if I took the 236 and spread it out and everybody got the same, what would be the average merit increase?
Dollars or percent?
Percent.
3.
So when we talk about going from 0 to 7.5, not everybody can get 7.5.
Correct.
So if somebody got 7.5, somebody's going to get 0.
Correct.
So I think it's important because this sheet, as I read it, it was confusing, and I pinged Troy and said, this is confusing to me. But in actuality, if everybody got the same, it'd be 3%.
Correct. This is an attempt to fit the way we actually operate the city and budget under the programs and policies that we've created with council buy-in. It's a little bit of a round peg in a square hole developed by the legislature that wrote a law that doesn't account for the way we actually run our city. So if we wanted to fit into that square peg or square hole more easily, we could eliminate, for example, the merit program, which means then everyone would just get the same raise and we could tell you exactly what the number is.
Right. Okay. That make sense?
Yep.
Karen, okay?
You need,
Yes. So we need to open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment in relationship to this, they are welcome to come up and address the council. Anyone? All right.
Seeing none, I motion that we close this public hearing.
I have a motion. Do I need a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, I'm open for a motion now.
I motion that we approve resolution number 2026-20 that outlines executive municipal officers' compensation increases for Springville city officers and employees for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2027.
I'll second.
Second, that's a roll call vote. Mike?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
I think you're up again, thanks to Patrick.
I'm up again thanks to Patrick, and I think I'm up again for the rest of the night. So.
I think you are, is the reason why you wore a tie.
So this is a separate agenda item, a separate public hearing. This one's on elected official and statutory employee compensation. Most of this focuses around you as the mayor and council, but statutory employees is actually referenced in the state code, but not defined in the state code. We think it means those appointed positions in the city. The way the budget is currently formulated and presented, the mayor's total compensation for fiscal year 2027 would be $26,087, and each of the councilmen's compensation would be at $18,099. As far as the statutory employees, that compensation is based on the schedules that are adopted in the budget. So each of them are in a defined position within the city. That position list is maintained by the Human Resources Department, and each of those positions is categorized within a grade in the pay tables that are being adopted as part of the budget. So their compensation will depend on their placement within those grade tables. Again, happy to answer any questions you've got on this. Otherwise, you need to open a public hearing, and then you've got a resolution to contemplate there. Actually, this one needs to be done by ordinance, so it's an ordinance, not a resolution.
What is included in the total compensation for mayor and council?
This is everything that's paid, and that would include wages, salaries or wages. There's a small stipend, and the number is escaping me.
2,400.
2,400 is the small stipend for various expenses that the council might incur individually, cell phone usage, that type of thing. Gas
Meals.
would be a good example. It does also include the city's portion of any required payroll taxes. So that's included within the number. So the council's wages are less than this. This is the total compensation.
Okay. All right, we'll open this up for public comment. Okay.
Since there is no public comment, I move to close the public hearing.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, I need a motion.
I'll motion to approve ordinance number 21-2026 that sets compensation for Springville City officers and employees for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2027.
I will second that.
Okay, as a roll call vote, Karen,
Yes.
Mindy,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Logan.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Bruce, keep going.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We're now moving on to the consideration of the budget. Just to clarify, because we've got a new term up here for you. This is a result of the new legislation that was passed this year that dealt with property tax issues. In May, the City Council adopts a tentative budget. That was done. It's been made available to the public for inspection. If a property tax increase beyond the certified rate is being considered, as it is in our case, and we've read the statement and presented the impact schedule, tonight's action would be then to adopt an interim budget. Interim because we can't adopt a final budget until we adopt a final certified tax rate, and we can't adopt a final certified tax rate until you hold a truth and taxation hearing, which you cannot hold until August under state law. And that's because we need to await the county sending out property tax notices, which happens in July. Are you still with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a slight editorial comment. Of all the things included in the new legislation, the most positive thing from it is an official term for what this budget is, interim budget. In years past, there wasn't a word for it, and now we have one. Prescribed in state code, so I'm very happy about that. I've mostly made this presentation to the council before, and maybe for the benefit of the public that's here, as well as those that are watching online. The budget process begins really back in the fall with early strategy meetings, another budget-specific strategy meeting in January. The city then goes to work preparing and working with the mayor to propose a budget, which is presented typically in another budget meeting in April, and that's called the tentative budget. That tentative budget then is considered in the first May meeting of the year. You've adopted that. That tentative budget then is released to the public for inspection, and tonight you're contemplating the adoption, again, as I just explained, of an interim budget with final budget, assuming the adoption of an interim budget tonight, a final budget to be adopted in August. If you choose not to proceed with the truth and taxation process and choose not to increase property tax, we could adopt a final budget tonight. We'd probably have to go revise a resolution and make some changes in the budget, but that is something that could be done. You do need to adopt a final or a certified tax rate by June 22nd, however. If you choose to proceed with a property tax increase, you would adopt that tax rate as a proposed certified tax rate.
It's maybe worth just making explicit. You ran down a bunch of the meetings that we've had up to this point, and we've just, made motions and voted on a number of things already without much discussion. And it's only because we've had the discussion quite a number of times on some of these things. And we've also taken people's kind of feedback along the way. So for anyone watching online complaining like, oh, they just vote unanimously without talking at all, it's because we've done a lot of talking about these things.
Yeah, and thanks, Logan, for mentioning that. But, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, kind of along the same lines that Logan just mentioned, all these meetings that we've had in the past are open public meetings. The public is invited to those meetings, and we would hope that the public, if they're concerned about the budget, would show up to the meetings and provide some input at the time. Once we get to this point, it's pretty well baked.
And I've really appreciated the people who have engaged with the process along the way. I know it's really helped us as we've helped us to understand some of the nuances and also to make adjustments where needed.
And I'm just to add that the process itself starts in January.
Right.
You know, so it's a pretty lengthy process, but we just invite the public to attend the meetings or get with us and help us as we kind of work our way through it. So great comments. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great background comments to maybe deflect the reality of me plowing through these next few slides, because the council has seen these slides now multiple times. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly, although I'm happy to slow down and go back and answer any questions that you might have. But again, you've already seen this presentation more than once, so I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. But I do want to go through the entire presentation for the benefit of the public that's here in attendance, those watching online, and then also for the record that's being taken. I thought it would be good to maybe just start with a couple of guiding principles that we try to follow as we go through the budgeting process, just to sort of set the stage of the overarching philosophy that we take as we approach budgeting. This is a over $120 million endeavor that we take on, and it's adopted formally and followed under state law, so it's kind of a big deal, but just want to make sure everybody understands the thought process that goes behind the development. Number one, we're required under state law. Unlike the federal government, the city has to produce a balanced budget, and this budget is balanced. And these are in no particular order, I just kind of threw these up there as my stream of consciousness took over, but we make measured efforts conscientiously to maintain service levels, or at least have the debate over whether service levels should change. And at least in this budget, the direction from council and our proposals have been to maintain existing service levels. You'll find that there is very little, if any, expansion of service levels within the budget. This is mainly a budget to maintain existing service levels, not to add a bunch of enhancements. We do take our stewardship over assets of the city seriously, and there are dollars budgeted within the budget to protect those assets, meaning capital maintenance, for example, and making sure that we keep our buildings, our roads, our equipment maintained properly so that they're safe to use, so that they can be enjoyed by the public in the fashion that they were intended. From a utility standpoint, also from a tax rate standpoint, as the mayor mentioned earlier, we're interested in fostering rate stability. That doesn't mean rates being stagnant, but trying to eliminate large fluctuations in rates. Some of that's difficult, for example, in the power department, where you've got power markets that can swing wildly, and we're subject to those swings. We make measured efforts through hedging gas, for example, to make sure that we provide stable rates that the businesses and the residents in the city can rely on without big surprises year to year of large double-digit increases, either on property tax or on utility rates. We think it is extremely important fiscal management to account for inflation, and I appreciate, as one who has pled for many years to account for inflation, this council, this mayor, for being willing to recognize the fact that when we have inflation in the economy, the buying power of every dollar of the city's funds is diminished if we don't adjust for inflation. That's really the idea behind the utility rate increases that we'll talk about tonight, as well as the property tax increase. And finally, we need to account for the fact that we have a workforce that in many regards provides unique services. It is difficult in today's marketplace to find, for example, a wastewater plant manager, which is a highly skilled position that requires certifications and credentials. There are very few people like that in existence. So we have to respond to the market as it relates to the wages that are being offered there, and we need to try to retain the employees that we have, that we've invested a lot of money in training. And so a significant component of the city's budget is trying to maintain a workforce in jobs that are often not very attractive jobs. We've gone through a long cycle where it's been very difficult to hire a police officer, and that's a core governmental function that the community relies on, and it's very difficult to maintain a police force when a limited number of people want to be police officers. So we have to respond to that market reality by making the wages there sufficient to attract employees to come and take those jobs. So with that backset, I'll start kicking it into a little bit higher gear here. We do start the process with looking at economic conditions both nationally and at the state. I'm not going to go through every one of these bullet points. You can just kind of peruse these as it's up, but we are blessed to be in Utah, which is one of the strongest state governments in the country. It's a very diverse economy. We've been immune from many of the impacts of COVID and economic downturns. So Utah is one of the strongest economies in the state, and we benefit from that by being in one of the fastest growing counties within the state. There are, however, still economic risks, high housing costs, and national policies that still affect us. Those are all considerations as we develop the budget. Turning to inflation, again, we make every effort to address inflation, which right now has been at about 3.2%, or anticipated to be at 3.2% on average for the year of 2026. Most economists are pointing to a slight slowing of that, although depending on the policy of the day at the national level, sometimes that spikes back up. So every economist I talk to says the inflation we're projecting today is good for today, and then tomorrow it'll be something different. But our budget's basically built around these numbers, hovering right around 3%. The United States has relatively low unemployment rates and relatively slow, but not non-existent real GDP. When we turn to the state level, you can see if we skip down to that third bullet point, the unemployment rate in Utah is even lower, which makes that employment market even tighter for us, which is why we've got to respond on the wage and compensation issues. Just at a quick high-level glance, again, with the overarching principle of maintaining service levels, given the fact that we are facing the reality of roughly 3% inflation, the general fund budget is this year slated at just over $37 million, which is up about 2.5% over the fiscal 26 number. Total city budget's 126, almost $127 million, which is up 6.3%. In terms of personnel, we're at 340.78 full-time equivalents. That's up a very modest 0.7%, equal to about 2.37 full-time equivalents, and that's really a reflection of the fact that there's very little new being proposed in the budget in terms of service level. Most of this would be either reconfiguring or making up for understaffed areas, at least relative to the 2026 budget. As we've already discussed, a 2.92% or $97,000 property tax increase citywide, which would equate to about a $5.49 per year increase on the median home resident in the city. We talked about enterprise fund transfers, maintaining that transfer rate at 6.5%. On the utility rate increase side, those range, and I'll go over this in more detail here in just a few slides, but between 2 and 4.5%, again, all driven by inflation. That should equal for the average residents about a $6 a month impact, which is not nothing, but relatively low, and I'll have some other slides that sort of address that. We talked in our study session just before this meeting about the implementation of transportation utility fee. The budget does contemplate that going into effect. It wouldn't go into effect until October, and it's really pending how fast we step through that process. There is a process prescribed by state law that requires some public meetings and notices and whatnot. But right now, at least in terms of budgeting, the plan is to implement a $4 a month transportation utility fee that would be effective in October of this year.
Maybe this is jumping the gun on that one. We've talked a little bit about keeping rates, making sure that they kind of stay abreast of inflation so we don't lose taxpayer buying power or ratepayer buying power. Can you really quickly kind of run through the idea behind a TUF, why we're contemplating that? Or is that later in your presentation?
It's not later in the presentation. We had some discussion on that issue in the meeting previous to this. The reality is, in order to maintain the transportation infrastructure that exists in the city, which is a lot more than just the streets, but it does include all of the streets, except for those that are maintained by the state. It includes sidewalk, curb, gutter. It includes the active transportation plans. That would be things like bike lanes. It also includes improvements that we have often neglected in terms of intersection improvements that would facilitate either better traffic flow or increase safety. There are simply not enough dollars that come in from the gas tax, the B&C road funds that are transferred to us or distributed to us from the state level in order to maintain those service levels. They are out of sync with inflation. And so while the state has made efforts to bring in other funding sources, they still lag behind. The presentation that you listened to in the study session before this indicated a fairly large gap over the next 20 to 30 years. And so the transportation utility fee is intended as a mechanism to fill that gap between the actual cost of maintaining that transportation network, making improvements as much as possible to increase traffic flow, which seems to be a primary concern of the residents, and the actual revenue that we're actually bringing in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
And the reason this is called a fee rather than an additional tax is because it has a direct correlation to usage. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there's been a Supreme Court case that's sort of adjudicated that. There was some argument over whether this was a tax or a fee. The Supreme Court has ruled that it is a fee. The state has now prescribed further that in order to solidify its place as a fee, the mechanism by which we implement the fee needs to be correlated to the usage and the impact on the system. And so there's a prescribed methodology under state law that directly correlates the fee with the impact that a user, a residence, or a business has on the transportation system itself. So it can't be an arbitrary fee. Just high-level numbers, and again, I'm not going to go through every one of these, but in the general fund, overall revenues are up 4.2%. That includes the contemplated property tax increase. Sales tax has really slowed down. We're actually showing a number that's slightly below, and I only mention this one because it's really the largest single revenue source in the general fund. The number we've currently got in the budget, although I'm going to talk about this here at the very end of the presentation, is actually down from the fiscal 26 budgeted number, but we believe it'll be about 1.5% higher than what we anticipate the fiscal 26 actuals come in at. So there is some growth. It's just less than what we budgeted in the current year. We talked about the $9 million in transfers here, and that's a big component of what comes into the general fund. This is just a duplication of the enterprise fund transfer slide that you've already considered, so I'm not going to spend any time on this one. In terms of personnel, again, this is a citywide look, full-time equivalent count up 2.37%. There are a couple of departments that are converting some part-time positions into full-time positions that really are offset in terms of hours in the calculation of a full-time equivalent. We've currently got built in a 3.0% cost of living adjustment that would occur in July of this year, and then a 1.3%, which equates to a 2.6% annualized number for the merit increase portion, but that is not effective until January. So we budget half of that 2.6% as it relates to this current budget year, since it'll only be in effect for 6 months. We've covered all the benefit cost increases, which were minimal this year, thankfully, with no significant changes to the benefit plans of employees. In terms of capital projects, again, this goes to the overarching principle of sort of maintaining the systems and assets that we have. The general fund, $1.1 $1 million, most of it being spent in parks and recreation, improvement projects or renewal projects. There is a large number budgeted in the streets fund, $12.5 million almost in capital projects in streets. Much of that's coming from Mountain Land Association of Governments funded grants for large projects of regional significance. The mayor sits on that board and is aware of a lot of those projects that are going on. But for example, the construction of 12th West, there is a matching component for the city, but the lion's share of the costs of that roadway construction are carried by MAG. But we've got nearly $4 million for road maintenance. So this would be crack sealing and mill and overlay work and microsurfacing, along with some new construction, particularly on the west side, as that area begins to develop. In our vehicle and equipment replacement fund, $2 million approximately is being budgeted for replacement of existing fleet vehicles that have reached end of life. And then in our facilities fund, $2.3 million for renewal and replacement of facilities-related assets. You're aware of the PAR tax that exists. That's a component of sales tax. And this is just a reminder, we typically budget new revenue that comes in the current budget year. In fiscal 26, we did a mid-year budget adjustment and allocated $600,000 from PAR fund reserves to go towards the renewal and expansion of the arts park. And that was coupled with a significant private donation that was made to that facility. And as a result of that, the PAR, or the community board, recommended not allocating another large amount in fiscal 27 for PAR-related projects. They did fund, however, recommend funding, obviously at the discretion of the council, to adopt that formally, the mini grant program of about $60,000, and then some internal programming in various departments of the city of about $66,000. Turning to utility rates, and this really goes to the discussion around trying to keep up with inflation. This graph, while hard to see, shows the annual rate increases by year for the last 10 years by each of the utilities that are within the city. What I really want to draw your attention to is the area in the red circle there. If we look at the average of what we call the big three, which is power, water, and sewer, those are really the most costly of the utilities. You can see over a 10-year period, we're averaging 3.5%. We compare that to a 10-year inflation increase of 3.3%. So we're within 0.15% of matching inflation. And then if we look at it over a 3-year period, we're just below the 3.7% inflation at 2.94%. I pulled this from a neighboring community's budget document. This is Orem City's fiscal 27 tentative budget. They're kind enough to go do a rate comparison for us, and so I didn't go do this work. So rest assured, this is a neutral third party that represented this. You can see water, sewer, stormwater, and garbage and recycling fees. They've got many of the Utah County cities listed here, along with some other select, probably mostly Salt Lake, maybe a few Davis or Weber County cities added in here. You can see in green are the average costs. In yellow, that's Orem's fee. And then the red circle is Springville. So you can see for water, of the cities that they looked at, we had the lowest water rate. For sewer, we're in the bottom quarter, if not a little lower than that. For stormwater, we're more towards average, but still below average. And the only one that we're leading the pack on is garbage and recycling. The one thing I'll note there is that garbage is different cities belong to different sanitation districts. We belong to the South Utah Valley Solid Waste District. I think the only other, Spanish Fork and Provo are the only other ones on this list, I believe, that belong to that same district. So a big component of our garbage costs are the tipping fees at the transfer station and the fees that the transfer station then pays to the landfill. All those costs flow back to us. You can see we're not far off of Provo, which is in the same boat as we are in terms of utilizing that local district for transfer and landfill services.
And there's nothing really we can do about that. We can't go to a different, dumping place, right?
Not easily, and probably not economically, because the reality is we're very well positioned geographically to the transfer station. It's just right across the Spanish Fork Springville line. So if we were to, say, make an effort to go to North Point transfer station, which is up in Linden, we could potentially it would be difficult to extract ourselves from the current district, but if we did, the next closest alternative would be go to North Point, which means every trip that the garbage truck currently makes of just a couple miles would be a trip of probably an hour round trip and however many miles that is.
Well, and I may be misremembering, but some of these other cities that take their garbage to places like North Point, I believe some of those transfer stations are due for a rebuild or an update anyway, so it's possible that their rates will go up.
Part of what you're seeing here is the reflection of the fact that we have a brand new state-of-the-art transfer station that should serve us long into the future, 30 to 40 or more years.
Yeah.
So we've made that big front-end investment. That's a good point. In terms of power, Orem is a Rocky Mountain power city, so they didn't bother to look at power rates. So I went to our next door neighbors in Provo who were kind enough to do a rate study for us. You can see here residential energy rates. This is monthly average numbers. Out to the far right, the red bars are Provo's. Springville's kind of right in the middle, if anything, probably just slightly below average. Maybe I'll point out that everything on here except you can see the RMP with the arrow down there. That's Rocky Mountain Power. Everything else on here is a public power city. So we're less than a lot of those public power cities. You can see Payson and Heber are higher than Rocky Mountain Power. We're about $10 a month cheaper than Rocky Mountain Power, but a little more expensive than St. George and Spanish Fork, for example. From a high level, public works, when we talk about water, sewer, stormwater, streets, solid waste, these are all administered and managed under one structure. So there's a high level and ability to coordinate projects, which is one of their focus areas. They're working hard to design and construct projects that are needed. They're working on some cost of service analyses and rate design efforts to make sure that we have our rates properly structured. We've talked already about the transportation utility fee that's proposed and the inflationary rate increases that are proposed there. Again, for most of public works, those numbers are in the 3 to 4% range. The slightly higher than CPI inflation rate there is really a reflection of the construction index or inflation index that is a reality. When we look at CPI, that works well for residences and the typical things that we consume in a house, but it's not very reflective of things like PVC pipe and various ductile pipes that are used for public works projects. And those inflation rates currently are a little bit higher. Mentioned $12 million in the streets capital projects. In water, they've got about $1 million going to fire flow deficiencies and hopefully wrapping that up in this year to where we no longer have fire flow deficiencies. There's also about $500,000 budgeted to bore under I-15 to extend I don't remember, Brad, if that's culinary and PI or if it's just PI. Water, anyway, to the west side of the freeway. And the sewer fund, $800,000 going to digester rehabilitation and stormwater, some 16th South betterments and some reimbursements to new development in the amount of about $400,000 for stormwater facilities that are being built as part of the city's obligation towards oversizing next to new development. The power fund, revenues anticipated to be up about 5%. That's reflecting some modest system growth and then a 0 to 2% rate increase depending on what rate class we're looking at. The power purchase budget is up about 2.5% or 5.5 or 550,000. Power department's been going through some right-sizing exercises. They're down about 16% in terms of total full-time equivalent count over the last 2 years, but are anticipating hiring an analyst position there to deal with some of the financial issues and analytical issues that they face. And about $5 million in various capital projects in the power fund. In the golf fund, the last of our enterprise funds, revenues there anticipated to be up about 11%. That's reflecting 8% rate increase effective in December. But really utilization, if you skip down to the utilization side, during high season, which is kind of May to September, the golf course sees over a 90% utilization rate, which is kind of off the charts in terms of utilization. So if you want to golf at Hobble Creek, phone in early to get your tee time. The good news there is that utilization has really helped the golf course recover in terms of its ability to reinvest and protect the golf course from a capital perspective. So they're able to, I think this is maybe the third or fourth year where they've actually been able to put some of those proceeds from revenues into renewal and replacement of capital projects, which is important. That's pretty much the end of the high-level budget discussion. I do want to circle back just quickly to the certified tax rate and explain a couple of things. I mentioned earlier that we're on this weird and very tight time frame with the combination of us being required under state law to put out certain notices, the county doing assessments, the state certifying the assessments and calculating the certified tax rates. Part of that new legislation actually extended the deadlines for all those things to happen. It used to be that we would get the certified tax rate no later than June 6th, and it often came earlier than that. Under the new legislation, they extended it the opposite direction, so it's now due by June 13th, which was Saturday. They did get it to us early, 4 o'clock on Thursday, so we had one extra day to look at it before the weekend. The result of that actually was that the rate revenue generated from the certified tax rate revenue calculation from the state is about $160,000 less than what we put in the budget. So our alternatives there are to either go cut $160,000 out of the budget, which is more than what we were proposing in the way of the property tax increase, or leave the property tax increase the same and either cut dollars out or raise different revenues, or increase the property tax increase by another $160,000. Correlated with this, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, this is since the tentative budget was adopted, came out with a new study that they commissioned with a independent economic advisory firm or consultant that went through and projected sales tax increases by city in anticipation of us budgeting. Sadly, they didn't give us that information until I think 3 weeks ago maybe. So our budget was already formulated, the tentative budget was already adopted, and now this new economic model came out. The amount of increase that they're projecting and our final number for fiscal 26, along with the amount of growth they're projecting for next year is an amount a little over $200,000. So what I'm proposing to do and what your resolution reflects is for us to keep the property tax increase at the slated amount that we've already notified everyone of, which is the $97,000, just under 3% increase. The resolution will direct me as the finance director to go in and modify the property tax revenue line item in the interim budget to match what's in the state certified system, and then adjust the property tax, or excuse me, the sales tax revenue estimate up by an equal amount in order to maintain a balanced budget. That seemed to me like the most defensible, least painful from the standpoint that if we start monkeying with any of those other things, everything in the budget is interrelated and we would basically have to redo most of the budget. Even if it's only nominally, there's just so many interconnected numbers. So I just wanted to make that clear that in the resolution that you're considering tonight, there is a directive in there from the council as part of the resolution to make those two adjustments. So to match the property tax revenue to be exactly what's in the certified tax rate system, maintain the $97,000 property tax increase, and then adjust sales tax up to compensate for that difference that's in there. Does that make sense?
There's not another line besides sales tax that you can up? Is there like an other revenue line that you should, I mean, it just looks weird to have it under sales tax revenue.
There are a number of others, but to me, the sales tax, when given the new economic model that the league ran for us, is the most defensible. That one's, number one, it's the largest single revenue source at over $10 million. So a $160,000 adjustment to that is a relatively small percentage. The other lines that exist, I could go make an adjustment somewhere else, but they're less real in my mind. I think it's far more defensible to say that sales tax is going to come in $160,000 higher than what we projected with the number that we estimated 6 months ago. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Last two slides and I'll be done. In terms of Utah County property tax comparison, I think this is important to look at, and I'll try to not make it too complicated. This is not all, but most of the cities in Utah County and their certified tax rates. There's a little bit of mixing and matching in here. Most of the data that comes out of here is from the state's certified tax rate system. Not all cities have input their proposed rates yet, but many have. So I pulled those. So these are live numbers reflecting property tax anticipated to be implemented for fiscal 27. Separate from that, within our city management group, the city management group issued a survey. It's all self-administered, but 68 cities within the state responded to the survey. Of the 68 that responded to the survey, 32 were proposing property tax increases. Many of those were in Utah County. And I've tried to reflect what was in that survey here in this slide. So what you're seeing here is a component of a very complex property tax system. So just to recap, when a resident sees a property tax bill come in the mail from the county, that total property tax amount includes all the taxing entities that levy a property tax. The primary one being the school district. In any given year, usually 75 to 78% of that total property tax bill that a resident would see goes to the school district. For the city, it's an amount of about 14 to 15% of the total property tax bill that is the city's portion. This slide is only talking about that 14 or 15% of the total property tax bill that a resident sees. So it's not the full property tax amount. Within that property tax amount, there are multiple components that do come to the city. There's a general operations component, and that's sort of the darker teal green color that you see there. There, depending on the city, under state law, can be a library levy. So you can tax residents for a library levy that's standalone from the general operations of the city. And that's represented in the little red bars. So you can see Provo, Santaquin, and Highland all levy a property tax amount specifically for the library. The gold bars there represent general obligation bonds that are also a component of property tax. So for us, you can see a good chunk of the property tax that is levied against the residents of the city is to service the debt related to general obligation bonds, which were bond elections held by the city, in our case, to fund the library and the CRC. And then there are a couple of other miscellaneous things, tort judgments, for example. So if there was a big lawsuit against the city, that can be levied as a property tax against the city over a period of time. And then another one that's very tightly prescribed under state law, which is a public safety levy. Interestingly, this year, Orem decided to convert its general operations component to being 100% dedicated to public safety. They're increasing their property tax rate and converting it to being 100% dedicated to public safety. Bottom line, when you add all those components up, you can kind of see where Provo lands in comparison to all of our neighbors in the bottom close to quarter, if not third. And again, this is including all things, including debt. To me, what's very interesting is if you look at just the darker green teal, that's the operations portion. That's the real core of governmental services that you provide, all the public safety, the library, the parks and recreation, and all the administrative costs that are here. And if you look at that across, I mean, Springville really has, and this reflects the 3% rate increase that's proposed, one of the lowest property taxes in the county.
So you go back to that.
Yeah.
On the debt thing, that's the library, the city building, the CRC, right?
This is just general obligation bonds, so it's only the library and the CRC.
Okay.
So the city building that you're talking about here, we make that payment. There was not a bond election held for that. We issued what are called lease revenue bonds through the Municipal Building Authority, and we just make a lease payment to the MBA. And we make those payments out of general fund dollars, but they're not levied as a separate tax.
Okay. And when those debts go away, then we are down into just the teal area. Is
That's
that correct? And how long before those debts go away?
20 years.
How far out are they?
Yeah, they vary. Let's see. The library was issued in 2010, I think, and
I think it's 2031 and 2034 or
I think.
5, somewhere in there, yeah.
yeah,
So in 4 or 5 years.
for about a third of it, and then closer to 10 years, 9 or 10 years for the CRC portion.
Gotcha.
So they're staggered a little bit.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting about this is really getting down into the weeds, but maybe to just expand your knowledge of how that works. The levy for the debt service is directly affixed to the debt service schedule. So and it is within a few $100s, levelized debt service. So every year, the amount we pay is plus or minus a couple $100, $1.4 million for debt service. So as the city grows and new development occurs, those new residences, those new businesses now pay a portion of that assessment, which means then to the extent that the city grows, everyone else's proportional share of that debt service goes down.
So actually this year that amount went down 10%. We're still tracking data down on that. We think it's probably because the RDA came off and there was a large influx of commercial value that went in. But there's a significant reduction in that component of the property tax this year.
Okay, last slide, and I should have put this in order, but I didn't. I just pulled it off the way I had it. But these are Utah County cities that are proposing property tax increases at the same time many of them probably tonight. And you can see from north end of the county down to the south, any number of rate increases. If you average them, it's 39% increase. Santaquin and Springville, and I will say if I carried the decimal out a little bit further, Santaquin's higher than Springville, but we're both right around 3%. I think Santaquin has actually adopted a strategy similar to ours, which is we're going to annually adjust property tax for inflation so that we don't have to come back in a future year and raise 221% like Eagle Mountain or 53% like Highland.
That's, wow.
To be fair to Highland, their increase is actually 53% on the library levy. I think the way they're portraying it is in the combined rate, which includes their operations and library, the overall impact's 6.9%, but still a pretty big increase just for because that money can only go to the library. Anyway, that's the last slide I have on the budget. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take those. If you need any clarification on anything, I'm happy to go over it again. Otherwise, you just need to open for public comment and then deliberate on the motion that's before you.
Okay. I'll open this up for public comment. Okay.
Seeing as there's no one to comment, I motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Okay, I'm open for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2026-21 to adopt and operate under an interim budget in the amount of $126,996,387 for expenditures and transfers in the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2026 until a final budget can be adopted following a Truth in Taxation hearing on August 18th, 2026.
I'll second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Mindy?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Okay, Bruce, you're up. Don't make this 45 minutes again. The last one was 45 minutes.
And that was just the overview.
Hey, it was $125 million. I mean, we should give it a
Yeah,
little bit.
exactly.
I want you to get
Let's
your
take some
money's worth.
time on that money.
And you and I can geek out on it. But
I do appreciate the overview, though.
I do
It's always
too.
a good review of what it is that we've been talking about and helpful.
he does a good job.
The resolution that's before you now and what you need to hold a public hearing on is an amendment to the fiscal 26 budget. So we're now
Current
not talking
budget.
about next year's, it's the current year budget, correct? And we typically do a budget amendment at the end of the year to try to tie up some loose ends and make sure that we've got budget authority for things as we close the year out. And I'll hit these very quickly. It's convoluted because of the way we have to account for things. I will try to roll them up into topics rather than individual line items. So the first one has to do with our public safety departments, police and fire, who are proposing to move some operating dollars into the capital fund because they want to buy a new training smart board with largely grant money that they received. So this amendment simply transfers some operating dollars from the general fund to the general CIP fund and creates a new project to make that purchase, again, mostly with grant dollars. Similarly, in the Parks and Recreation Department, we're proposing to move $7,700 of operations dollars to the capital fund from Canyon Parks, and that will go towards, if you skip down just a couple lines, some fencing at Jolly's Ranch, and then moving some grant dollars from the Recreation Department to the capital fund for a portable stage in the CIP fund. And again, just quickly, the reason for that is we try to capture capital items, which we define as items over $5,000 and with a useful life of more than a year. The accounting of that needs to happen in the capital improvement fund. So we're just shifting dollars around to make those expenditures in an appropriate manner. The next one is a recent notice that we got from Mountain Line Association of Governments, an award of $2.2 million in change, grant funding for the 8th East, 8th South roundabout construction. This recognizes that revenue and places those grant dollars in an expense count in the streets capital fund. Related to that one is a trailhead. This project actually has existed for a while. There's some things that needed to happen before construction could commence. It was really the Bartholomew Spring work that was happening in the same area. Now that that's complete, we can continue with the construction of the trailhead there at 2900 East Canyon Road. And there's some supplemental dollars that came from grant funding from MAG in the amount of $728,000 to complete that project. In the water fund, this is another accounting issue. They actually budgeted for a new transport trailer. They budgeted for that in their water fund. From an accounting standpoint, we need to capitalize that in the vehicle and equipment replacement fund. So we're going to transfer those dollars from water to vehicle and equipment and make that purchase. And then the final one is related to the budget amendment we talked through a few weeks ago, where we shifted a whole bunch of dollars around. If you remember my elegant chart on the screen there with all the boxes and arrows, that effort was really to recognize revenue that came in from property sales and repay the appropriate funds for all those. We're proposing in this amendment to authorize a $1 million transfer from the general fund to the CIP fund as a contingency in the event that when we close out the year, if the general fund balance, unassigned fund balance, results in a number higher than the statutory limit of 35%, that we can transfer that balance into the capital fund. I don't anticipate it'll be the full amount, but just to be safe, I wanted to put a placeholder there that would give us the flexibility to move that and still remain in compliance with the state law. And that's all.
Okay. This is open for a public hearing.
Yes.
Anybody from the public who'd like to address this particular issue on a current budget amendment? Okay.
Seeing no one come forward, I motion we close this public hearing.
Sec-
I'll second.
And those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Okay, I'm open for a motion.
I motion we approve resolution number 2026-22 to open and amend the general fund, streets fund, capital improvement fund, vehicle and equipment replacement fund, and water fund for operating and capital expenses applying to the fiscal year ending June 30, 2026, as outlined in Exhibit A.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second.
It's roll call vote. Karen?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Okay, Bruce, bring us home.
Can't remember if I made a slide for this one. It looks like I did not. There's a resolution in front of you. Again, it was amended slightly from what was sent out in your packets, reflecting the mill levy. So it's the actual certified tax rate that the state published late on Thursday. We're just required under the law now to adopt,
Accept it.
in our case, a proposed certified tax rate, which is the number that's in the resolution is the one that's in the certified tax rate system. So we just need, this does not need to be a public hearing. This is just the council adopting the resolution with the intent to adopt a rate that's higher than the certified tax rate published in the system. And that triggers then the truth in taxation process and the related notices and meetings that would occur thereafter.
Okay, very good. Need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2026-23, adopting a proposed certified tax rate in accordance with Utah law for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2027, as outlined in the attached Utah State Tax Commission Property Tax Division Form PT-693.
I second that.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Mike?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
And Mindy?
Yes.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Riddle.
I will say for the record, if you don't mind, Mayor, that my dad was a nurse anesthetist. He put people to sleep for a living for 45 years. So I come by the delivery of this presentation, honestly, I think. But
It was
you for sticking-
very well
It was
delivered.
very well done.
And no needles, so.
And,
Yeah.
and no riddles.
I'm
either.
still awake.
That's right. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Thank you, everyone, for being here.